right, now pleased to be joined by Richmond head coach Chris Mooney. And Chris, listen, this should be fairly easy for you to break down your team because we've got one significant change. Other than that, is it right 15 of 16 players from last year's team are back for you?
That's right. 15 of 6, including 2 walk-ons who were seniors last year, decided to come back and pay their own way for another year.
Listen, it just shows everybody loves you. That's what this proves. Everybody loves Chris Mooney.
Right.
They never want to leave you.
That's right. That's right.
So last year was kind of an interesting one. I had you guys ranked high. I think as high as 15 in the preseason. I still feel like you would have been a team, in that mix. Certainly if Nick didn't get hurt. And then the COVID year for you was it was tough for everybody, but it was especially tough for you guys with all you had to deal with. How difficult was it, I guess, overall with the expectations you guys had and looking back on it and it being an NIT year?
Yeah, I mean, really difficult. We had 3 pauses COVID-wise. One was for false positives, so you wipe out basically 10 days. The hardest part about the pauses were, by the end of the year, we had a bunch of guys test positive, but no one was really sick. But they were stuck in the room, and that was really a hard thing. Even our toughest, oldest, or silliest guys had a hard time with that. And then we had some injuries late, Blake Francis and Grant Golden. So it was really tough. And I think that, like you said, everybody had it tough, but everybody had different situations to play through. Some teams were kind of fortunate enough to not have missed too many games. And I think that was really hard for us as games were disappearing from the schedule. That was a hard thing to wrap our head around and to get through. And then when you came out of those pauses, when we came out 3 times, if you're out on a Monday and playing a game on Wednesday or Thursday, it's really hard. And so again, that is an excuse, but it's such a unique thing and really hard for us as kind of a rhythm team to master that rhythm. So really challenging for us.
What will also be challenging for you this year is life without Blake Francis.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he was your guy. You could put the ball in his hands, end of clock, and just say, hey, go get one for us. Yeah. Just kind of expand a little bit on that and just what he meant to the team and how you plan on trying to, make up for that. If you have any, and if the offense will change a little bit, certainly at the end of the shot clock without him.
Yeah. So, Blake is a great player. And he was, not only was he a very good scorer, but he was just a really tough-minded kid and player. And so he loved those situations. He was aggressive. He wanted to score. He was, his mind worked like a scorer. He was good at that. And he was also an intense and dedicated defender. So, I mean, missing or losing Blake is tough. I think probably, coaches probably don't change their offense X's and O's as much as they change how they're talking to their team and where they want to emphasize. And, we've been a team that probably scored a lot more in transition than most people would generally think. And we score in the post a lot. Now, Blake helps that because he spreads the floor and gives us more room. But I think those 2 things will be really important to us. Scoring inside, Grant Golden, Nathan Kao, Tyler Burton, Nick Sherrod. And then scoring in transition, whether it's capitalizing on turnovers or getting the ball out of the basket. I think those things offensively should really be our bread and butter.
And the good news, the one guy you do bring back in, however you want to say, is Nick. And it was kind of crazy because, listen, Nick got hurt before the season last year, and mentally he was checked out. He was done with college basketball completely. Yeah. And then I don't know, Chris, was it that he saw some of his other guys coming back and said to himself, all right, it's a whole lot easier. They're coming back. It's not like I'm going to come back with a completely new group of players. How much do you think that factored into him saying, you know what, I want to give it another go? Yeah.
Well, I do think that was a big part. I think that not necessarily that they swayed him or that was the only reason, but I think that made it, the guys came back kind of one at a time, the 4 bonus seniors. And he was the 4th, which I would have anticipated. And We had talked throughout. I feel like that made it easier. And then also, Nick is incredibly bright. He's the best ambassador we could have for Richmond basketball. He's a great kid, and we're very close. And he's going to look at this from every angle, and really process it. And I think that he had the support of all the coaches and players of doing that. And when those guys came back, I do think it made it like, well, if I can, it takes a lot to come back from an injury, a lot of mental and physical dedication. And I think he said, well, I can do that if there's some comfort and confidence on the other side. And I think that's where the guys coming back is, he doesn't have to, he's great with the younger guys, but he doesn't have to bring them along so much during the games. He can be part of that unit that he's used to playing with for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yep. And now, I know he looks a lot better. No more McDonald's, no more any of that stuff now. I heard he looks like the old Nick at this point.
Even better. He's lost a lot of weight. He's probably usually played at like 230. He's down to 215. I mean, he looks great and is a full go, and everybody's just thrilled to have him back.
All right, we got to talk about a fellow Massachusetts native who I absolutely love. Tyler Burton, to me, has so much potential, and the potential started to match up with the production last year, right? I mean, he took a huge jump. How much do you stay on him this year? Because frankly, I almost feel like you're going to be as good as he is in a lot of ways, right? I mean, he could be player of the year in the league in terms of his talent level. How much are you on him to kind of be more of an alpha dog, and how much of the other guys on him do that too?
Yeah, well, I would say that's the key point. I think the whole team and program is, I think it's one, he's an incredible kid and worker and pleasant to be around and coachable. And so that makes,
you don't get pleasant guys from Massachusetts. They're rare.
Not often. So it's so cool. And so, but that makes it easier because he's so likable. It's not like he's charting his day, and, he's a team guy. And so it really does open him up to everybody's input, and guys talking to him, and guys, there's no secret of how talented he is. And so I think I'm on him, but almost not as much as the seniors, which is nice. It's not like the seniors are saying, this is our team. And, there's none of that. I think they realize, his talent is hard to, it's hard to dismiss. And the better he is, the more aggressive he is, the better we are.
What's going to be different about this team? Again, as we talked about, no Blake, that's the biggest difference. What else do you see as kind of something, again, Jacob, those guys, Jacob, Grant, Nathan, they're all going to have more opportunities now, certainly offensively, without Blake.
Yeah, I would say that I think that Blake was a unique player for us. And we've had guys who have scored before, but his mentality was probably the most aggressive of a player we've had. And I think in a really positive way. But I think we can just enhance our strengths. So our ball movement, our player movement, guys who have a really good understanding of how to play. And, I think we'll challenge the team to be an elite offensive team. We've always been a very good offensively, and I think we could be an elite offensive team. And I also think it's a nice compliment because Jacob is so creative and can score and set guys up in different ways. Grant has close to 2,000 points. Nick Sherrod is a scorer. There's a lot of different ways we can score. I think if we were in a half-court game, a grinded out type game, we'd be able to score and efficiently get buckets. I think if we're in an up and down game, that might be when we're at our best. We'll be able to score. So I don't know if we'll be that much different. I will say this, we'll probably be bigger. And then our depth is very, very good. Because these 4 guys came back, we have 15 scholarship players, and we have really, really good depth. So getting guys in and maximizing their contribution, that's going to be really challenging for the coaches. But I do think we have great depth, and we have very good size.
And you have experience and older dudes. I mean, listen, Have you looked at it? Is anybody older in their starting five than you this year?
I have not looked at it. I was at Air Force for a while, and BYU was always older because of the guys coming back from the mission. But I have not looked at it, but there are some, I will say this, they're great to be around. And there's no feeling of, I said, none of these guys came back with conditions. They didn't say, I'm not helping in recruiting, I'm not practicing the day after a game. None of them. And that has really carried from those discussions to now. They've been all in, been great with the younger guys, been in the gym constantly. So it's a pretty special group.
Well, you got to feel that they feel like they didn't go out the way they wanted to go out last year. Part of it being a COVID year, and just part of it being the way they wanted to finish out, right? Go to the NCAA tournament. 2 years ago, you were on track to do that before the season was shut down. And then last year, it was almost like, it wasn't a real year in so many ways, the fans and everything. So you got to figure that played a huge factor in them.
It definitely did. I think that I had said the year before they were juniors, I said this was going to be the best class in Richmond history. And, I think statistically it probably proved that way. But, that kind of class, and have, all five of those seniors, including Blake, were 1,000-point scorers. That senior night should be, 25 minutes and,
yes,
and
tears flow.
Exactly. So all of it was uncomfortable and not exactly what we had been building towards. So I'm sure that played a big role in it.
Last thing before I let you go. St. Bonaventure, everybody's got them at the top of the league. I mean, they return their entire starting five comes back, and everybody else left.
Yeah.
How do the expectations, do you like this in a way that right now, last year, again, I probably put you higher than I should have, looking back, but there were some factors there as we talked about. But do you like the fact that right now you're not getting all the attention and the bodies are?
Well, there's something to be said for that. That's positive. I do feel like this group is so old. One thing that's difficult in the A10 is, unless you have a Dayton with Obi Toppin a few years ago, or the St. Joe's team with Jameer Nelson, your best teams are on the bubble. Maybe a few spots in, maybe the first four out. And that's so prevalent when it comes January, February, March, that I'm not on social media and it's constant for me, let alone these guys.
Yeah.
And so, you're saying like, and it's just a person's opinion. I mean, it's an educated opinion, but they say, we're first four out. We have this game. Oh, that game got canceled because of COVID. Carolina has won 2 in a row. And so it's just a huge distraction if you let it be.
Yep.
I hope that this year's group, because these guys have been on that bubble for 2 seasons straight, even if you're projected as a 7 seed, 8 seed in the A10, if you drop a game, now you're
last loss.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
That's just the nature of playing in a high mid-major league. And so I just feel like these guys will say, hey, that's the deal. The pressure is good. And let's go play the next game, because I feel like they've just have so much experience with it.
Yeah. I mean, and they seem like an even keeled group. Again,
Yes.
They've been through everything, right? They've been through the highs, the lows.
Yep.
It's kind of been a roller coaster ride in a lot of ways. And that should be one of the benefits of being able to coach an older team. I mean, listen, they've dealt with the social media, right? On both ends, being told they weren't any good,
Yep.
and then how good they are. So hopefully
Exactly.
they're able to be even keel.
No, exactly. And that's a big part of it. I think how teams approach, it's not so much how you're going to, hey, we're up 15, how we're going to finish this last minute. Those are easy.
Yeah.
But after you lose and stumble and things are, that adversity, how do you face that? And I think with experience should come just a solid resolve and be able to move forward.
Yeah, you never, in your playing days, you never had to deal with the social media onslaught. I mean,
I know.
imagine how big your your ego would have been back then.
Massive, massive. Well, I can't, it's interesting. You're in the world, but these guys, they'll show me once in a while, and it's complicated. It's a little bit heavy and more than I think would have been able to handle.
Not fun, not
Right.
fun. Social media, listen, it's not going anywhere. I know that, but sometimes I wish it was. All right. Well, listen, appreciate it, Richmond coach Chris Mooney. Really appreciate you taking some time, and we'll hopefully get out there and see you play in person soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jeff. Always good to see you.
Awesome.
Before we move on, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up for Bet Rivers yet, now is the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, it's more secure, and it's more reliable. Now that basketball season is tipping off, get in on the action at betrivers.com today, or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while I got you here, let's talk about the Field of 68 Media Network, where college basketball matters most all year round. This is a digital media and podcast network that we've been building over the course of the last year. We have shows hosted by some of your favorite players covering the program that they love the most. AJ Guyton hosts the House of Hoosier. Eric Devendorf covers Syracuse on the Scorer's Table. Dan Dickow hosts the Gonzaga Bulldog broadcast. We have Florida's Patrick Young and Duke's Andre Dawkins and North Carolina's Shammond Williams and Michigan's Stu Douglas and Illinois' Deion Thomas. The list goes on and on and on. We have more than 30 shows right now. So hit the links below and check them all out. And while you're at it, make sure that you go check out the Field of 12 Media Network, your home for college football.
All right, that was Richmond coach Chris Mooney, and now it's time to dig even deeper into the Richmond Spiders, and we do that with two guys who know the program about as well as anybody. We'll start with Richmond Hall of Famer Greg Beckwith, who I think Greg still owns the record, all-time record for assists and steals. Has anybody broken those things yet, or no?
Unfortunately, yes, it is broken. Yeah. Jacob Gilyard has broken both records last year and has had a phenomenal career so far. And he will put a lot of distance between a lot of people with his steals and assists going forward.
All right. Well, you had it for a while. And another guy that's got his share of records, I'm sure, in the Richmond area, John O'Connor, who's covered the team for a while, does an incredible job covering the beat. And John, appreciate you taking the time as well. Let's start off. We'll start off with you, John. And this Richmond program, obviously, I mean, listen, there aren't a lot of changes personnel-wise. It's probably been very easy for you over the last couple of years, not dealing with a ton of newcomers. This year, 15 of 16 players return. Now, the one that leaves is a big one in Blake Francis. What do you expect? Any major changes? I mean, obviously you got Nick coming back, but other than that, is it kind of going to be similar, or will there be some changes from a year ago?
Hey, Jeff, the only thing that I really see as a major change with this team is when that shot clock gets down to 6. That's when Blake Francis would take the ball and create. And he was really the only guy among those Spiders who was a creator. All those other guys work so well in that system that Chris Mooney has, but Blake could sort of break the mold, get a jumper off, get to the rack, dish a ball. He could do a lot of things in those last 5 seconds that were necessary. That will be missed, and I look forward to seeing how Richmond solves that.
All right, so Greg, there's the question. How do they replace Blake in his shot creation?
Well, I think there's a young man by the name of Tyler Burton, who's a very athletic player, about 6'7". He has a lot of upside, a lot of potential, can take you off the dribble. I think they'll look for him. And I think Jacob Gilyard will have to step up in that regard. I know he didn't do it last year. He kind of, as John mentioned, just gave it to Blake Francis, who's a very aggressive player on offense. But I really think that he'll he'll start picking up and doing those type of things where he'll have to be a more of a creator, dribble penetration and finding guys. But I really think that Tyler Burton is a guy who could do that off the dribble as well.
John, 2 years ago, they kind of put themselves in position, and Chris needed that year, right? I mean, there was some pressure on them. We heard it. They go 24-7, 14-4. They're challenging for the A10 title, and then obviously they don't get an opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament. Last year, I had them ranked, boy, I don't know, 15 in the preseason, and I thought it was warranted. I really did. And you know, it's hard to really evaluate anybody off last year in a COVID year. But how important is this season having, again, so much back other than Blake? As long as Nick is, you know, close to healthy, they're a team that should challenge for one of those top spots in the A10, right?
Yeah, you figure if they finish in the top three, Jeff, they're in good shape for the NCAA tournament, and that's a place they should be. This is a year to which Richmond has been building. COVID or no COVID, they were sort of a disappointment last year, able to get some pieces back they ordinarily wouldn't have had back. Heck, this is the most experienced team Richmond's ever had, perhaps college basketball's most experienced team.
Yes.
This is a big year for Chris, as you mentioned. 2011 was the last time Richmond went to the NCAA tournament. He hit a major recruiting slump after that, 20 loss seasons back to back there. Hung on, came through it, got these guys together, and this is the year they got to do something. Last year, as you mentioned, was so COVID messed up. Richmond had, 3 suspensions of play because of COVID, never got in a rhythm, had injuries. They had 4 guys on the bench at the end of the year who were hurt. So it was just a weird year all the way around. Chris has got to get something going this year. If he doesn't get to the NCAA tournament with this group, probably is going to be a while because, the older guys are the best players on this team. They'll be gone.
Yeah, I mean, listen, experience does win, right? I mean, it's been proven over the last few years, certainly at the highest level. The younger teams, even with a ton of talent, have trouble winning at the highest level. I mean, you've got 2 6-year guys, Greg, 2 5th-year guys. Your baby in the starting lineup is Tyler Burton, and he's 21 years old. I mean, on most teams, that's your veteran. That's your leader, that's your veteran, that's everything. How important is that, do you think, this year? And maybe some of the pressure that these guys are going to face now, because frankly, again, now it was on them a little bit going into last year, but it was almost like a mulligan. They beat Kentucky. That looked like a huge win. Didn't turn out to be. But this year, I think there's got to be more pressure on this group because this is it. They're not getting another year. They're not getting a 7th year.
No, you're right. I think the biggest thing for these players, and they understand it, they expect it. Their expectations are high for themselves as well as the coaching staff. They expect to be up the top of the ladder in the A10, with St. Bonaventure, who's a very good team. They had a lot of people coming back, but I think they have embraced that. And what I liked about this team is they all have great individual accolades, but they all know that from a team standpoint, they need to accomplish something special. And this is the year that they want to do it. As you mentioned earlier, 24-7 that year before in 2019, there's a lot of expectations for them. They were thought, second seeded in the A10 that year, going into the A10, and then COVID hit. Last year, as you mentioned, we all thought this would be a great opportunity. And it was just a jagged year last year. When Nick went down in October with his knee injury, that set him back a little bit. They all felt bad for him. And then they just never got any comfort. After the Kentucky win, it was really, really a jagged season. So I think they all understand what's ahead of them. They have embraced it, and they like this adversity, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves to succeed. And they know they have to get to the NCAA this year. That's all they talk about. When I talk to individual players, they know that this is the year for them to do it.
Hey, Jeff, Greg mentioned Tyler Burton, and so did you. And I just want to say that this is a guy I felt sorry for so long now because he's the young guy. He's the most athletic guy on the team, and Chris Mooney has often said he could be one of the best players in Richmond history. And he's sort of trying to find his way among all these older guys. It's difficult for him to assert himself, though he probably should do it more often. I understand his position, and I do feel bad for him, but I think he's a hell of a player. He's just sort of, there's a ceiling there with the guys, the older guys in this program who've been there for 5 or 6 years now. He doesn't want to get touched. He want to get up there. So I think this is a big year for him to show, hey, this can be my team as well as Grant Golden's team, Jacob Gilyard's team.
Isn't that on the older guys though, to bring Tyler along and say, hey, listen, you're the most talented player on this team. Everybody knows that, right? Your upside is higher than all of us. And in order for us to get to the next level and win the league this year and be better than St. Bonaventure or whoever, right, Greg? Isn't that on the older guys as much as it's on Tyler?
And I'll be honest with you, last year, I know Blake Francis pushed him hard on the side and said, hey, you with your talent level, you have to step it up and you have to bring it every single game. And I think that's, as we all know, younger players, when you have that veteran team, it's kind of like, well, but yeah, as to John's point, he has to push himself to do it. And we've seen some flashes. There's brilliance with him. We had double doubles and just looked phenomenal. It's just getting that consistent level now for him. He has to do that. And these guys know the system, as we all know. They know Coach Mooney's system. I think Coach has pushed Tyler even further to the more than anybody, because he's like, I don't care if you step outside that system. You're talented enough to do things that a lot of these guys can't. So as the A10 most improved player last year, they're expecting him to really step up.
Yeah, fellow Massachusetts native, by the way. So I'm
That's right.
I'm rooting for Tyler. I'm rooting for him. Hey, John, you wrote a story recently about Nick, and I thought it was really interesting. He had ballooned up weight-wise because he didn't think he was coming back. He had the injury, and I don't know if he thought his career was over, or maybe he tried to play overseas or whatnot, or just mentally. Obviously, it was a tough enough year last year. You have COVID, you add in his injury back in October. And then he decides to come back later than kind of the rest of the guys. And he goes from what did you say? He weighed like 250 plus?
Yeah, right up around 255, I think he said. He's lost 40 pounds since then. It's a tribute to Nick, because, as you said, when he hurt his knee about this time last year, it was mid-October, I guess, he thought he was done. Second knee injury, different knee, more extensive injury than the first. And he just saw it as a good time to close it down and move on. He wants to be a teacher.
To eat a lot of snacks, right?
Yeah. Well, you rehab and you don't do a great deal of aerobic stuff while you're rehabbing, I guess. And then when that rehab stopped, he just didn't move into the aerobic conditioning portion of it because he didn't think he was coming back. And he did. He gained a lot of weight. If you see him now, you wouldn't recognize him, though. He's down to 215. He says he's ready to roll. Everybody starts practice next week, and he'll be fully involved, and everybody presumes he'll be back in that starting lineup. That's a great deal of experience. A 6-year guy who's been basically a starter since his freshman year.
All right, so
to add to that, Nick's, as you know, his family, his granddad is a former player with the Knicks under Hubie Brown, and his dad played at Old Dominion. And I've talked to those guys a good bit and stayed in touch with the family just as he progressed. And when they were talking about him coming back, he really didn't. As John said, he was just kind of like, this is it, I'm done, from a mental standpoint, right? So I think for him, after he saw how the season ended and he saw that, hey, a lot of these guys are coming back, that's when he made a decision on, you know what? And I think they talked him into it as well. Like, I know his mother didn't really want him to play, wanting to move on from a mental standpoint. She was like, he's done. But he got back into the rhythm and got in the gym, and he has a great work ethic. And I think he's going to help. Whether it depends on how he plays, who knows? But his leadership, quiet leader, I think it'll help the team.
Yeah, and he spaces the floor no matter what.
Yeah. In addition to being a quiet leader, he's a hell of a three-point shooter, and that's significant too.
But what about the bench guys? The bench, they didn't need a ton last year from the bench just because, their top 5 guys play so many minutes and give them so much. But what needs to happen on the bench this year to maybe give them a little bit more of a lift and, interior wise too? I think the other question is rebounding, but start with the bench and what needs to happen there.
Well, I'll start by saying I've always thought this team needs one more big man. As long as Chris has been there, he sorely needed a bruiser. The bruiser never fits into his offensive system. Pass, shoot, dribble if you're a big man. So it's sort of been a vacancy that he's accepted. But man, on the defensive end and on the boards, they could always use one more 6'8" guy who's about 235.
Yep.
Never had one since Darius Garrett, really, who was sort of the linchpin of that 2011 team, a shot blocker and a rebounder who was very aggressive. That's the missing ingredient to me. That's what they have to cover up because they use it on the other end to their advantage by not having anybody that clogs up the offense. Anyway, Greg, that's my negative on the bench. I'm sure there's plenty of positives too, though.
Well, I think the good news is for Coach is that Grant Golden got hurt at the end of the year. You talk about a big, and it allowed for a guy like Matt Grace, who's a serviceable player coming off the bench, not really going to do a lot. But what happened was he gained a little confidence and played very well in Grant Golden's absence. Now, can he consistently do that? What he did the last couple of games of the year in the NIT, not sure. But to John's point, they definitely need someone to come in and step up. They have a lot of athleticism off the bench. A kid Isaiah Wilson will be really good as a guard coming off the bench. Andre Gustafson, a very experienced guy coming off the bench, about 6'4", long arm, very good defender on the ball, and very athletic. He's a sneaky athletic kid that will help them. So they and they love this kid Jai Bailey, who's really athletic as well. And we saw little glimpses of him playing in IT. It played very well. When you look at the last couple of games at Toledo and Mississippi State last year in the NIT, those young guys really played very hungry. They played very hard. And I think that was missing as we talked about these older guys who get really complacent at times. These guys injected some energy, and I think that's what they're going to look from the bench. Energy guys. And then John mentioned shooting. The one guy that they were really counting on that got hurt was Connor Crabtree. He came from Tulane, had nagging injuries throughout his career. Don't know how much he can contribute, but he was a guy that was supposed to come in and shoot the ball well from the perimeter for the Spiders.
So I know, the talk is all about the NCAA tournament, right? I mean, obviously within the program, again, they're older, so they're not going to shy away from it now. Some teams shy away from that. You don't want to talk about it, put the pressure on. These kids are older. They're not kids anymore. They know now what's expected of them. What do you guys think will actually happen this year? John, where do you think they fall? Do you think they do make the NCAA tournament if they stay healthy? They finish in that top three. Maybe they contend with St. Bonaventure, which brought everything back among its starting five, but lost everything else. 6-13 gone. So that's where Richmond should have an advantage, right? Is they got everybody back other than one guy who was pretty significant, but everybody else knows the system, knows their roles for the most part.
Yeah, Jeff, I still like St. Bonaventure, just their toughness. I mean, those are adults playing basketball up there. And when you play at St. Bonaventure, you have a great home court advantage. It's difficult to beat the Bonnies there. I see Richmond second. They got a great non-conference schedule, perhaps the best in school history.
Brutal.
Yeah, which should help them because they should be ready. They should be mature. They should be able to handle that sort of thing. Win 3 or 4 of those big games, you're in good shape coming into league play, finish second in the league. I see them in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2011.
Greg?
And I agree. St. Bonnie's going to be tough. VCU is always there as well. They play hard. They lose Bones, so that's going to be a big loss for them. But the Spiders expect to be in the NCAA. There's no question about it. They embrace the schedule. It's going to be brutal, but that's what they want. I think it will be a letdown. It'll be very disappointing if they don't get there, and they all know that. I think everyone's expecting them to be at the top of the A10, and hopefully the A10 plays non-conference across the conference, plays a good non-conference and wins those games, and they have 2 or 3 guys that get in NCAA this year. But one of the things I'll tell you, Jeff, what I thought, and I know everyone can say this around the country with COVID last year, I really thought that this team fed off of the energy off of their fan base as well, and not having those fans and all the things that they had to go through. They had a lot of stops and goes, and that really wore on that team. Not to make an excuse for them, but I just know that as John said, the home court advantage for all these teams in the A10 and all these other tough conferences. They really need that energy, and I think that's going to be a big deal for the Spiders players this year.
All right, biggest key, John, biggest key for this team to be able to get to the NCAA tournament is what?
Golden, healthy, fit, out of foul trouble. Gilyard's a hell of a player. He's 27 steals away from the NCAA record that Linehan set back in the early 2000s. But Golden is a point forward. The ball goes through him on offense, and he's absolutely essential on the defensive end because of his size. He is the most essential player on the team, in my view, though Gilyard is obviously a great player. Need to keep Golden out of foul trouble, healthy, and productive.
Greg?
Wow, you stole mine. That's good. No,
That's good. Hey, if you guys agree, then I'm locking it in. I'm writing it in stone.
Well, there's no question Grant is the key. But I'll say this, they're expecting Grant, Gilyard to step up and be consistent players and performers. Key is, I'll go back to Tyler Burton. In those games where they play athletic teams, they play some tough teams, and Gilyard and Grant are having an off game, they need a guy like Tyler Burton to step up and really perform on a consistent level on both ends of the court, because I know they were disappointed on the defensive end at times where he had some breakdowns. So I will say Tyler Burton will have to step up and play consistent basketball on both ends of the floor as well.
Hey, Jeff, just one more key that I have mentioned, Greg had mentioned, is two new assistant coaches too. I mean, I don't know how much that's going to factor in, though the two fellows who had been with Chris, Marcus Jenkins, who went off to Minnesota, and Steve Thomas, who went to DePaul, they had been around Chris for a lot of years. And you wonder how much the staff change, affects the way things go down.
That's the biggest change. I mean, we didn't get to it, but that is clearly the biggest change on this team has been staff movement. Before I go, I do want to mention the non-conference schedule, because you mentioned it a little bit there. But like these teams, there's no easy ones. There's no, you can't circle a single game on this schedule and say, if we play our C or D game, we're going to win anyway. I mean, Utah State, NC Central is always really good in their league. They win their league a lot. Drake's going to be really good. Hofstra is always at the top of their league. Toledo's at the top of their league. Old Dominion's at the top of their, Bucknell, Wofford, Northern Iowa. I mean, you go down the list, and then you got the heavyweights, right? Then you go to the Bahamas, you play Maryland, they're top 25. You might follow that with Louisville or Mississippi State. They're both fringe top 25. NC State. I mean, I don't know who did this schedule, but man, it is brutal. Well, because you always want a couple, this, Greg, you always want a couple, maybe not as a player, because you want to play somebody every game. But now looking back on it, don't you want a couple that you can just circle and say, hey, you know what? Even if we stink, even if our best player gets in a fight with his girlfriend, we're still going to win this one, no matter what.
Yeah, from a player standpoint, you always say, yeah, we want the challenges. That's going to happen. But yeah, there's no breathers. There's no breathers. And then what happens is when you look at a team on the front of the chest, you see that name, it's, okay, Drake. And then you lose because they're a really good team. But yeah, it's going to be a brutal schedule. And it's the first time I think, and John, you can answer this. I don't think we've ever gone to Iowa twice in one season. Iowa twice, which are tough teams, right?
I think that's a fact. And, I think the schedule lays out and it says something about what Richmond thinks, which is we're pretty good. We want a chance to prove it. And they are, and they're getting the chance. It'll be tremendously interesting around Christmas time to see how they've done.
Yeah, their net ranking going in the league play should be pretty good if they do what they're supposed to do, right? I mean, split in the Bahamas, beat NC State and take care of business with some of those other schools. And you're going to have a net that honestly is going to be in the top 20, 25 because you haven't played any of those 300 level teams. So that's ultra important. And I think it's interesting. It's an interesting strategy putting together a schedule like this because it can blow up in your face. And if it does, and you lose a couple of those games, Drake, Georgia State, NC Central, those type of games, you put yourself in a tough situation going in A-10 play and almost having a maybe win the league if you don't do what you're supposed to do in the non-conference.
But the
Yeah, and I
Spiders
think-
should be good early. Should be good
Yeah.
early. They didn't lose
Yeah.
anybody.
They're
to
older.
transfer. You know,
Great point.
very
That's
few
exactly
teams
right.
can say that. And they should have cohesion, chemistry going early, which should help them a lot in those, November, December games.
Yeah,
Well-
we know that if it were a younger team, that schedule wouldn't be as such. So their expectation with these older guys to come out and play right from the start and pick up where they left off from the NIT, and they should be able to do that in all honesty. And they wanted this type of schedule. So I think it'll be interesting to watch. To your point, Jeff, how do they, play on a consistent level right from the start? They have to come out and play hard and get some victories.
Well, listen, I appreciate you guys joining me for a few to break down Richmond. Greg, John, again, have a healthy year. Enjoy the travel back on the road a little bit. And for everybody watching, make sure to follow along to the Field of 68 for all of our top 50 preseason previews and other content. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. That was terrific. And like I said, happy and healthy year, and enjoy your time on the road.
Same to you, man. Thank you.
Take
All right,
care, guys.
Jeff. Thanks, man.
See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.